Now for the news in detail. The U.S. has recorded its lowest daily death toll from coronavirus since March, with 330 fatalities in the past 24 hours. The death toll in the country has crossed 115,000. In Brazil, 612 more people have died, taking the death toll there to over 43,000. Worldwide, the death count has topped 433,000, while infections are over 7.9 million. More on that now in this report.
The coronavirus pandemic is showing no signs of abating as China and South Korea combat a second wave of local infections. China has turned to mass testing and district-level lockdowns in Beijing after a jump in cases connected with a wholesale food market in the capital. US President Donald Trump is scheduled to hold a rally on June 20th, which experts warn can be extraordinarily dangerous. Meanwhile, Peru's historic peasant brigades have re-emerged to implement the lockdown amid surging cases.
We are in a tireless fight against the invisible pandemic that has been doing damage to various countries of the world. And so the peasant brigades, based on our own experiences in the 13 provinces of our region during the state of emergency, we have assumed a predominant role in what concerns territorial control.
Shops in England selling non-essential goods will reopen today for the first time in almost 3 months amid strict safety measures. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has urged people to shop with confidence. In France, President Emmanuel Macron is accelerating plans to ease the country's lockdown.
The new phase, which begins tomorrow, will allow us to accelerate the economic recovery, and we need it. I'm relying on you because we need to fully start up our economy again, all the while protecting the most vulnerable.
Australia is looking at infrastructural spending to boost its economy as the country faces its first recession in 30 years due to the pandemic.
Well, here in Pakistan, 97 more people have died from COVID-19, taking the country's death toll to 2,729. The health ministry says over 5,200 tested positive in the past 24 hours, taking the infection tally to more than 144,000. The ministry said over 53,000 people have recovered across the country. There are more than 88,000 active cases. The ministry said that more than 897,000 tests have been conducted, with some 29,000 overnight. Officials said Punjab province has reported 54,000 cases and Sindh nearly 54,000. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has over 18,000 cases, Balochistan 8,177, and the capital city Islamabad more than 8,500. Meanwhile, Gilgit-Baltistan and Azad Jammu and Kashmir have reported nearly 1,800 cases. Pakistan has strongly condemned the Indian Defence Minister's remarks about Azad Jammu and Kashmir as well as the occupied valley. In a statement, the Foreign Office said Rajnath Singh's statement is another example of New Delhi's delusions about AJK and its obsession with Pakistan. It said instead of such delusions, the Indian government must immediately remove all restrictions in occupied Kashmir. The Foreign Office said the BJP government is seeking to force its decisions onto the people of the occupied valley through brute force. It said hundreds of innocent Kashmiris have been martyred in extrajudicial and custodial killings since August 2019. Addressing a rally earlier, Singh claimed the people on the Pakistani side of Kashmir will soon demand to be a part of India. The Afghan government and Taliban have agreed on Qatar's capital Doha as the venue for the first meeting in their peace talks. President Ashraf Ghani's spokesman Siddiq Siddiqui, however, says there has not been any agreement yet on the venue of the direct talks. An expedited prisoner swap under the Doha Accord and a loosely holding Eid al-Fitr ceasefire paved the way for the talks. Intra-Afghan dialogue was originally scheduled for March in Oslo, but roadblocks in the implementation of the Doha Pact delayed that process. Iraq's Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi says he will not accept attacks on the country's security services. During his visit to the National Security Agency, Kadhimi said he will work to prevent attacks against the police or military. The Prime Minister also said it is important to preserve and protect the dignity of citizens. Al-Kadhimi added that Baghdad is facing great economic challenges, which are reflected in the security situation. He said the government has several plans to overcome the crises and challenges. Earlier in the week, Baghdad launched strategic dialogue with Washington to address the fate of the U.S.-led coalition in the country. Turkey says it has launched Operation Claw Eagle against terrorists in northern Iraq. In a statement, the Defense Ministry said fighter jets destroyed caves used by terrorists for shelter on the first day. It said the warplanes destroyed the posts of the Kurdistan Workers' Party in the vicinity. The ministry said the operation is being carried out in Sinjar, Kandil, Karachak, Zap, Avashin, Basyan, and Hakurk regions. Officials said Operation Claw Eagle is taking place under the right of self-defense sanctioned by international law. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation has slammed Houthi attacks on civilians in Saudi Arabia. The bloc has also backed the Arab coalition's efforts in Yemen. In a series of tweets, the OIC said Houthis continue to target residential areas with missiles and drones. It also condemned the militia's recent missile attack on the Saudi Najran city, in which some civilians were wounded. Earlier, the Yemeni government said the Southern Transitional Council has withdrawn from the Riyadh agreement. In a tweet, Foreign Minister Mohammed al-Hadrami accused the separatists of seizing a money-laden vehicle of the central bank. The government and council signed another agreement in April to implement the Riyadh agreement. Israel has begun preparations for building a new settlement in the occupied Golan Heights named after U.S. President Donald Trump. In a statement, the Prime Minister's office said cabinet ministers have ratified the decision. Settlements Minister Zipi Hotovli said her ministry will start preparations for Ramat Trump to house 300 families. The 30-year-old Jewish settlement is currently known as Brushim and has a population of 10 people. Israel captured the Golan Heights from Syria in the 1967 Middle East War and annexed it in 1981. The move comes weeks before Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu plans to begin annexation of the Jordan Valley and West Bank. Iran has slammed the U.S. for pressuring the International Monetary Fund against a possible $5 billion loan for Tehran. State media quoted President Hassan Rouhani as saying Americans were still trying to block the loan requested by Tehran. He said the IMF should not be influenced by U.S. plots and must live up to the commitments it has made regarding countries badly hit by COVID-19. Earlier, the governor of the Central Bank of Iran, Abdul Nasser Himmati, confirmed Tehran has requested a $5 billion loan from the fund. In the U.S., the police killing of unarmed 27-year-old Black American Rashard Brooks in Atlanta has been ruled a homicide. In a statement, the Fulton County Medical Examiner said an autopsy proved the cause of death by 2 gunshot wounds to Brooks' back. The report said Brooks died from blood loss and organ injuries caused by the wounds. District Attorney Paul Howard says prosecutors will decide by midweek whether to bring charges against the police officers. Brooks' death has reignited protests in Atlanta after days of worldwide demonstrations against racism, prompted by the death of George Floyd. The UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson says there is much more needed to tackle racism in the country and around the world. This comes as Johnson announced a new commission to look into all aspects of inequality in Britain. In an article, the Prime Minister said no one who cares about England can ignore the protests against racism sparked by the killing of George Floyd. However, he said the UK should not attempt to rewrite the past by removing historical symbols. Johnson said Britain's heritage should be left broadly in peace. He also condemned the involvement of far-right thugs in protests on Saturday, which led to the arrest of more than 100 people in London. The European Union has ruled out a transatlantic alliance against China and has dismissed systematic rivalry with Beijing. In a post on his official site, Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said the bloc will not pick a side in the U.S.-China conflict. Borrell said the European style of diplomacy focuses on multilateralism and cooperation. This comes ahead of a video conference of the bloc's 27 foreign ministers with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. The meeting is expected to focus on U.S. allegations of disinformation from Beijing. It will follow the first EU-China summit next week. I'll be back after this break with plenty more news. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Pakistan has announced it will begin manufacturing its own COVID-19 diagnostic kits for commercial use. The Minister for Science and Technology, Fawad Chaudhry, says the kit has been approved by the Drug Regulatory Authority of Pakistan. In an interview, Chaudhry said the locally manufactured kits will considerably bring down the cost of coronavirus testing across the country. He said the kit was developed by experts at the National University of Science and Technology with more than 90% accuracy. The minister was also hopeful about developing domestic ventilators within the next few weeks. He said clinical trials of 4 machines have already entered their final phase. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says the country will reopen its borders to all travelers from Europe's Schengen area on the 21st of June. In a news briefing, Sanchez said even though the virus has been cornered on the continent, the risk has not disappeared. However, he said Spain's land border with Portugal will remain closed till the 1st of July on Lisbon's request. The state of emergency in the country ends on the 21st of June as well. Limits on mobility will be lifted, but wearing masks in public will remain mandatory. Visitors from outside the Schengen area will be able to visit Spain from July 1st, depending on specific border agreements. Spain's borders are currently closed to tourists, and those exempted from the entry ban must spend 14 days in quarantine. In Turkey, 1 person has died and 18 others have been injured after an earthquake of 5.7 magnitude has jolted the eastern Bengal province. The Disaster and Emergency Management Authority said the quake struck the Karliova district. Officials said a guard died and 3 others were injured after 2 observation towers of a police station collapsed in Kanarpir village. Rescue officials said none of the injured are in critical condition. The earthquake also partially damaged 10 houses in El Mali and Dinar Bey villages of Yedisu district. In Iran, an earthquake measuring 5.1 on the Richter scale jolted Behram district south of Fars province. According to the National Seismological Center of the Institute of Geophysics, the earthquake's epicenter was 16 kilometers deep. It struck 17 kilometers from Behram city and 24 kilometers from Lamard. No casualties have been reported so far. Iran sits on major fault lines that are prone to near-daily earthquakes. In Myanmar, a local resident has started using food trash as compost to transform it into organic fertilizer. He's not only contributing to environmental protection, but is also earning a handsome income. More on that now in this report.
Food trash is equally harmful for the environment as is the plastic and other metal waste. Recycling waste is usually considered the reprocessing of plastic and other metals. But in Myanmar, a local has come up with a unique idea of transforming food waste into organic fertilizer. In Yangon, up to 2,500 tons of waste are produced every day, mostly from homes and restaurants. Inda Aung So has learned to transform food waste into organic fertilizer.
When we talk about recycling trash, most people see only plastic and other metals. Most are not aware of organic trash. This organic waste also causes damage to the environment at the same level as the plastic does. The food waste is kind of contributing factor affecting global warming and climate change.
Zoe is not only contributing to environment protection but also earning a decent income. He believes his business is about to grow as some large hotels and private schools have also begun buying his products.
People think that food waste is just trash, trash, trash. It is difficult for me to introduce the idea to the public that food waste is a natural resource. But I am seeing a bright future for our jobs because some big hotels and private schools are buying my products and they want to change their trash systems. I'm firmly confident that my job will become successful even though we have had difficulties at the beginning.
Inda Aung Soe said it is difficult to convince public that food waste is a natural resource. He has produced a huge amount of fertilizer and expects to increase the capacity in a few years.
Venezuela's economy has collapsed under a hyperinflation crisis. People on the outskirts of the capital are being forced to build and live in mud and bamboo homes. This is another sign of declining living standards amid the 6-year-long economic crisis. The details on that now in this report.
Venezuela is suffering from the worst economic crisis, while the crumbling infrastructure has left millions of people in poverty. Locals are facing catastrophic nationwide blackouts, hyperinflation, food shortage, and disease. Some families on the outskirts of Caracas are expanding a settlement of mud and bamboo homes, lacking running water, power, and sewer services. The dwellings in the community, known as lost trailers, have sloping walls, low ceilings, and sparse furniture. Resident Adriani Marcano is desperate about the economic situation.
People who don't steal have to steal to support their children. Someone who doesn't do bad things has to do them, and it should not be this way.
The families get water from a nearby well or fill a 150-liter for $1. Many cook with makeshift stoves using paper or plastic to light damp firewood.
We don't have any gas and we have to cook with firewood. Now, electricity is a problem as well. It rains and the power goes out. We are adrift here.
The United Nations says Venezuela in 2019 suffered the fourth most severe food crisis in the world, with 9.3 million people suffering hunger or inadequate nutrition.
Sometimes we get 100 bolivars and it isn't enough for our children. Sometimes he asks me for food and how can I tell him that I don't have any? I have to go out and look for food or call my husband for him to bring food. Sometimes we go all day without eating. It is very hard.
According to the UN Economic Commission, the disparity between the rise in prices and population salaries is so generalized that there is practically not a single Venezuelan who is not poor.
Well, virtually all stocks in Asia are trading lower as investors weighed the potential impact of recent spikes in coronavirus cases in the region. Japan's Nikkei 225 slipped almost 1.5%, while the Topix index shed over 0.5%. Over in South Korea, the Kospi dived almost 3.5% over the second wave of community cases in the country. Shanghai's Shenzhen component lost almost 1% as China's industrial output misses expectations. Hong Kong's Hang Seng index also fell nearly 2.5%. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. For the latest updates on these and other stories, you can always follow us on our social media at Indus.News. Thanks for watching.